So whether you go to St. Christopher's or Friendswood or anywhere south of St. Andrews, you'll be meeting Kathy in the coming months and years as she tries to amplify the work we're doing within our convocation, and we're commissioning her this Wednesday at 7 p.m. So you're warmly invited to join us for that. And please. You know, in the Diocese of Texas has more than 150 parishes, right? So that's really, really large. I came from a diocese that had 42. So we're really big here. And what we've done, of course, to help divide us up meaningfully is through geography. We've kind of selected groups that are geographically proximal and asked us to work together to amplify our mission. So what we do, we call those convocations. Each convocation has a dean that's meant to be sort of the center point of communication, not in charge of anybody, but the center point of communication. And the Galveston Convocation is the one we belong to. It goes from St. Andrews, Pearland, all the way down to Galveston, out to St. John's LaPorte, and out to Grace, Alvin, and obviously everywhere sort of in between. Yeah, and so Kathy Reinhold will be our area missioner serving all of those parishes, not serving the clergy, serving lay people in the parish to amplify the good work that you're already doing. So that's this coming Wednesday at 7 p.m. The other thing I'd like to just announce to you or remind you of is that we're having another one of these half-day retreats at the beginning of Advent. So on December the 2nd, we'll have an Advent retreat that's based on the Enneagram. Maybe you've heard something about it, but Jonathan Steele is coming to us from Victoria, Texas, to lead us in a half-day retreat on the Enneagram as part of a way to practice spirituality during Advent. So that'll be here as well. It's from 9:30 till 2 o'clock, sort of like today. And if you're interested, Ellen's very happy to send you an email. And yeah, anyway. We'd love to have you then. Not trying to get you at St. Thomas, just trying to minister to your needs if we can. Okay, I've already done too much talking, so Roger's up next, but let's just have a blessing for the day. So the Lord be with you. Let us pray. God, we are grateful that you have blessed Roger with memory, reason, and skill, and especially with wisdom and creativity. God, we are grateful for the work that he's doing through his books and through his teaching, and we're especially grateful that he's here with us today. And so we ask, God, that as he shares what is on his heart, what you have inspired him, that we might indeed ourselves be inspired, that you might nourish our creativity and our spirituality. We ask, God, that you would nourish the bonds of friendship and fellowship among us here. And God, we ask that you give us this nourishment so that we can go out after today and be nourishing to a world desperately in need of your love, of your creativity, of your peacemaking, and your fellowship. Amen.
So as I said, we're really glad you're all here. Roger, I got to know a little bit through the diocesan program for inviting, welcoming, and connecting people. And I found out that he likes to do photography and go bird watching and writes books. And so when Charlotte and Sue and I were talking about what to do, we decided that we would love for Roger to come. And we asked him, and much to our joyful surprise, he said he would love to come. So he is here with us today to share with you. And I have already told him, but this book in particular, I love. It's going to be my go-to baby present and small child present for quite a few years, I think. So Roger, welcome.
Can you hear me? Yes. Awesome. I have a pretty good loud voice, so hopefully you can hear. I just want to begin by saying thank you to this community who really turned out. I've done a lot of these events. Never have I had table decorations like you will see in just a little bit. Never have I seen my book on name tags. I mean, come on. It's pretty amazing. And our friend Kathy, right? Kay. When we go in our other room, y'all got to just notice what Kay did. All the decorations. She sewed everybody's placemats. Like, they're like real quilted placemats that she made for this event, which is stunning. And I know that that is her gift, and thank you. The gift of hospitality and presence. And Ellen, thank you for the invite to be here. It's a great place. All right, yes. So what I would like for you to do, I'm not going to do this to you often. I just want you to turn to the person next to you, and that person knows something you don't. Just turn to them for a second, smile, say hello. And you got friends here? Excellent. That person knows what it's like to be themselves. They know what it's like to live their lives. They know something different than you. They know theirs. And that's real. I'm going to start out with a tough story to kind of get us together. And people who know me to be smiley, happy, sensitive, but cheerful most of the time. In 2017, following Hurricane Harvey, I had a mental health crisis. And this is where it begins. And I turned 50 and need glasses, so let me get those on. I was cold. Even with 6 blankets piled on me, I was shivering and could not get warm. I held the EMT's hand while in the ambulance. I worried that I was being too much trouble and kept apologizing. I always apologize. Earlier that evening, my wife Kristen and our daughter Riley thought dinner out might cheer me up. So they took me to Cracker Barrel, one of my guilty pleasures. I ordered my favorite meal, but could not eat it. One bite, and I had to put my fork down. I looked across the table at the 2 people I love the most, and my vision began to blur so badly, I literally couldn't see their faces. I was terrified. So we went home, and I climbed into my most comfortable chair when an overwhelming sense of doom overtook me. I couldn't catch my breath, and my heart felt like a grenade that had just had the pin removed. Awaiting the impending explosion brought me to hysterics. Kristen called 911. I latched onto my wife's hand once we were together in the ER. Her touch felt warm. It felt safe. It felt familiar. I know her eyes. I observed them, and they looked tired. Red around the edges. I was a boat filling with water, and she kept me from sinking. I was holding on for dear life and unsure if I would stay afloat. Kristen and I were married on June 6th, 1996. Last night, in fact, was the anniversary, the 28th anniversary of us getting engaged. I don't remember those things, but my mother-in-law sent a text and congratulated us. So Kristen and I sort of looked at each other and went, oh, okay. We were married, okay. We were both 23 years old. We were young. I wish it was more exciting, but we met at church. Her mom tried to set us up. He's a nice boy. You should call him. And she did. She left a message, and I waited a day or so. I didn't want to seem eager, but I couldn't have been more excited. We ended up going on that date, and it's been 27 years now, and I love her more every day, even when relationships aren't always easy. Kristen's worries for me and the countless other challenges we were facing, financial, parenting, work, and the daily barrage of hate-filled politics and division had worn her down. It sounds extreme now, but at the time, she just wanted it to all be over. The memory haunts her still. A couple of weeks before the night in the hospital, she thought the warm sunshine and the fresh air might help my mood. And she needed a break. I started alone, made it as far as the bench across the street from our home, and frantically called her to come sit with me. I couldn't handle being by myself. She joined me, and like a young child, I put my head in her lap and I began to cry. She remembers hearing a plane flying overhead and prayed for it to crash into us. Death would be easier than this, she thought to herself. It was all too much. It is too much. Cold fluid from a clear bag filled my veins. I began to shiver. More blankets. I looked and smelled like a basket of dirty laundry. The sounds and sights of the emergency room plowed through my head like a train. My arms burned, my heart raced, and my vision was foggy. And I was trying to devise a way to tell my daughter that I was dying. I told Kristen I needed her to be in the room when we told our daughter, and she just looked at me and she told me to close my eyes and get some rest. And that's her way of telling me to shut the hell up. My head was telling me that I was dying. My stomach was telling me I was dying. And Google and WebMD were telling me I was dying. But I wasn't dying. I didn't have colon cancer, even though I had every indication of cancer based on certain symptoms listed online. Try it sometime. Don't try it sometime. You'll have cancer whether you do or not. I could feel my heart beating in my chest and ears and toes. The echocardiogram showed that my heart was healthy. I wasn't having a stroke, even though I told Kristen that my pupils were different sizes and my arm hurt. God bless her. I've since learned that I was in the throes of a prolonged panic attack and did not understand what was happening. It had taken control of my body, mind, and soul, and I had allowed it to do so. I have always been a worrier, my brain on spin cycle, fixated on the what ifs. I was spinning out of control, especially at night. So looking at me, you may not think that that happened. There's probably people in this room that have been through very similar experiences, or you know somebody who has. So the reason I wanted to share that with you is just to go ahead and establish that's kind of where I'm coming from. And it's been now since 2017, and I'm doing great. I have a village around me. I have a family who loves me. I have colleagues who love me and care for me. It took me 6 months before I was able to really be back engaged with the world. And in that time, I grew a lot. And people will say, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And what I will say to them is, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because it broke me wide open. And sometimes when you're broken wide open, the most beautiful things can happen. The most beautiful growth can happen. It may not look like what you imagine. I never imagined this. The title of the book that I just read this from is called The Art of Calm. It's really a joke. I don't know the art of calm. That's part of, I didn't want that title, and now I kind of love it because it's just really a joke to me. So, but as an artist, you practice, and so I'm practicing the art of calm, and what I'm trying to do is share this with others. I was very vocal about my experience. I posted it on Facebook, and I posted it on social media. And I thought, maybe I'm saying too much. Maybe I'm telling too much. Maybe I'm going to embarrass myself or my family or my community. But there was nothing to be embarrassed of. Nothing. I will say that one of my, I love Christians and I can't stand them. I work at a church, so I'm a Christian. But there's a whole chapter in here that I talk about. So I'm a clergy kid as well. So I have grown up in the church. I now serve in the church. I've raised a family in the church. And the church can be tough, especially when you serve on a staff. It can be hard. But it's also, I do it and I love it. But I do remember a parishioner went to my boss and said, I don't think Roger needs to work with our children and youth because he has mental illness. Really? They said that. And thankfully, my boss just, thank you. We think Roger's doing a pretty good job. I love that I can be in a place where we can talk about that. We live in a broken world, and we do a lot of looking, but part of what we've got to do is learn to see. And that's kind of how I move through life. I see color. I see beauty everywhere. During COVID, I started walking. I was at home and I just needed to walk. I needed to get out. And I ended up walking 6 miles a day. It took me a while. And I started taking pictures with my phone of things like, first I would take I'd take a picture of y'all. That's not a great picture. I mean, y'all look great, but it's not a great picture. Then I set some rules. I sort of said within 10 feet around me as I was walking, I wanted to start looking. And so in the sidewalk, I would see handprints or I would see leaf prints. And I would think, wow, that leaf, which has long rotted away, the memory is right there. It still exists in a different form. So I take a picture of that. I thought it was beautiful. I felt like an archaeologist looking for treasures, and I would take photos, and I would see fire hydrants. And I noticed on my walk one day that every one of them was a different color. And so I started taking pictures of them. And then I thought, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to take a picture over the top of it, so I get the top. And then I realized I had this beautiful display of the tops of these fire hydrants. And they were beautiful, and I put them all together in like a poster. I love watching people try to figure out what they are. Because they're just these beautiful graphic shapes, but they're just fire hydrants. Also during that time was when all of a lot of racial unrest was really hitting the surface in the news all around. And I remember I, being who I am, needed to do a lot of listening and not really contribute too much to the conversation, but I needed to just pay attention. And as I was walking one day, I was thinking about all of that, and I started taking pictures of locks and chains. And so everywhere I would go, I didn't realize how many locks and chains. Some were rusted, some were on gates, and some were blocking little work roads or whatever. And so I took a bunch of those. It was really powerful as I began to think about chains and locks, people held captive, all of that. So I shared all of that with people, and people began to notice it, and I was very surprised when people began to start talking about what they felt when they saw those. And then I loved it when I had a friend decide, I'm going to do a photo walk during COVID. And then they started posting what they saw, and they started posting what they saw. Very simple. We carry these around. And even if you can go outside, somebody will say, Roger, there's nothing beautiful around me. You don't see it because you're not looking for it. And so, even if you just turn right here on this floor in this slate, there's beautiful patterns. You get a picture of that. It's not rocket science, it's a simple thing. But our world doesn't make space for us to slow down, to be in that place. I want to share another story. I love to tell stories, and I hope that they speak to you as well. One of the things I felt when I was going through all of this is I felt that I wasn't very strong. I felt like a coward or an us, I felt like I should be ashamed. There was nothing to be ashamed about. So I want to start with, each of these chapters has a prayer. And this one is, Christ be with me. I'm not feeling brave. Christ be with me. And so each one of them is just that kind of mantra. And so I would, just as an aside, that's a wonderful practice. If you struggle with praying or finding a way to pray, what I do with our children is we do breath prayers, which are really beautiful. And so I'm going to tell you how to do that real quick. We breathe in and out all day long. That in itself is an act of prayer. But also, you can do something like, Christ be with me. Sort of think that as you breathe in. And then as you breathe out, say something like, I'm not feeling brave. Or, I'm thankful for the sun. Or, whatever that might be. And then when you breathe back in, Christ be with me. Just do it. If you have a hard time, like I tell my children at church, if you have a hard time falling asleep, it's a beautiful way to pray. What happens with me is I can't not, for the life of my wife, she's amazing, by the way. Natalie, my friend here, knows my wife, and she's pretty special. She has this practice. She lays in the bed, goes into a dark room in her mind, says her prayer, comes out of the dark room, and goes to sleep. Just like that. I'd be rearranging the furniture in the dark room. I'd be painting it. I'd be doing something. It wouldn't be dark enough. I'd see light somewhere. That's me. And so for me, doing this breathing, but if I sit and try to go ahead and pray, say I'm going to say the Lord's Prayer, I'm asleep halfway through it. I don't even finish it. I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I think that in itself is a gift God is giving me. It's okay that I don't finish it. All right, here we go. How do you define bravery? Some might say it means not being afraid of anything. Personally, I think that's the wrong answer. There's a difference between bravery and fearlessness. We can also be scared and brave at the same time. Feeling or experiencing fear is part of becoming brave. But becoming brave is learning to tolerate that fear we're feeling. Some people are brave from the earliest age. Not me. In fact, I'm a scaredy cat, but I've come a long way in finding my brave. Middle school field day. Oh, God. The Louisiana heat moved and danced across the pavement, an apparition from hell. Running, sweating, competition, awards, or not. Teams, My turn came to run the 50-yard dash. God, that was such abuse. I didn't have the words for it then like I do now. But again, I was most likely in an anxiety-induced panic attack. I started running. So far, so good. I could see the finish line. Sweat poured into my eyes, and then my body failed me. And I'm not going to use the word that I use in this book. I was running full speed toward the finish line when I went to the bathroom in my pants in front of the entire middle school. Yes, you read that correctly. At that moment, I decided to keep running. Across the finish line, through the playground, and into the school. I had no idea where I was going or what to do, but I knew I had to get away. My eyes burned with tears and shame. Thinking everyone was outside, I ran into my classroom to hide. Miss Bailey was there. Most of what happened next was a blur. But I remember this. Miss Bailey caught me as I tried to run out of the room, wrapped her arms around me, and pulled me into her lap, dirty pants and all. "What's wrong, baby?" she asked, hugging me close. Through snotty and shame-filled tears, I told her I thought she would express disgust and throw me off of her lap, but instead she didn't even flinch. She hugged me tightly and told me she loved me and that everything would be okay. Then she helped me clean up, found some clean underwear and shorts to put on, and made me go back outside. She even told me I was brave and strong. I was amazed. A woman I had little in common with became my protector. So I'll describe her. I was still pretty tall back then. Miss Bailey was about 5 feet tall and maybe 5 feet around. An African-American woman who, I don't know, I loved her. She was my protector. A doting mother hen, she pulled me to her bosom and held me there until I could breathe again. I remember how safe I felt in her softness, not only softness of body, but of heart. I hope I told her, thank you. Now, when I feel unsafe or afraid, I think of my mom, my mamaw, Miss Bailey, Kristen, my beloved partner and wife. Each of these women has held me, loved me, protected me, nourished me, and cared for me. Feeling safe and protected is imperative in the world we live in, and yet so many of us do not feel safe or protected. Far too many are not safe and protected. And as we seek a calm spirit for our lives, I encourage you to reflect on what it means to be protected and to be the protector. After middle school, I lost track of Miss Bailey, but that doesn't mean I don't feel her presence. That doesn't mean when weary or afraid and falling into God's open arms, I don't see the face or feel the softness of Miss Bailey enveloping me. Yeah. So we all have stories. You might not have pooped your pants in front of your whole middle school, which is mortifying. But we have stories. We have those moments where we don't feel brave, where we feel fear, where we can't catch our breath. And I don't know if any of you all know Sandy Sasso. Does that name ring a bell for anybody? She is a Jewish rabbi. She's also a really well-known children's picture book author. And so you ought to check her work out, Sandy Sasso. She said, we had an opportunity to interview her for a thing we do at Palmer. And she said, the world feels a lot harder now. Life feels a lot harder now. She said every, group of people say that at certain times. She said, but I really think it's really extra hard right now. And she said, what we need is hope. What we need is to We need love. We need to explore what it means to walk the way of love. Some of you have heard that. Michael Curry, who we need to keep in our prayers as he continues to heal from very serious surgery. He's our presiding bishop. He and a team came together to create this. They didn't create it. They took what Jesus modeled and they put it into writing and words, into the way of love. And that's sort of what I try to move through life doing. And it's not easy. It's also really funny. I think back to that story. I have some horrible middle school stories and, junior high. Oh. But I made it, and I'm here. I was diagnosed with, so when I was in the hospital, I was diagnosed with, If I won the lottery, all the money I could win, millions of dollars, my focus would be to put a mental health professional into every emergency room. That would stop you before you get a brain scan or before you get a MRI or before you get and you walk out of there with nothing but a $10,000 bill. That happens every day in every emergency room in our country. As I was laying there, thinking I was dying, everything was fine. Full scan was great, but I wasn't great. The doctor told me that the way I can get help is if you tell me you want to kill yourself. That's the only way I can help you. I didn't want to kill myself. I just needed someone to help me sleep and help me feel better about just being here, And I said, I don't want to kill myself. And so he quietly turned and walked away to take care of the patients whose wounds he could see. And so then we went home. But not without the love of, and I'm going to wrap up in just a moment and we'll move to, I promise you all of my story is not sad. I wanted to sort of know that I'm happy, but it's important to acknowledge those pieces, okay? And we're going to have fun in a few minutes. But as I was getting ready to leave, I was crying still because they handed me a stack of paper and said, you need to find a therapist. And blah, blah, blah. Well, and I remember saying to this assistant, or this nurse, this man who came in, and I said, I can't do anything with this. I can't even eat. I had not eaten in 3 weeks. I hadn't probably slept in 3 weeks. I just needed to be hungry and I needed to get some rest. And so he said, let me go talk to the doctor. And so he went and he came back in and he said, you look so familiar to me. Not the doctor, the man. And I said, I didn't know him. He goes, no, but you and I have been in the same ditch. And I want to reach my hand out and rescue you and help you, at least so you can get some sleep. And so he had asked the doctor if they can give me a pill that would just settle me down. That's really all I needed at that moment, is to be able to go to sleep and to eat. And so I took the pill, good old Klonopin that they give people, a very familiar pill. A lot of people use it. They give a lot to calm people down in the hospital. It's very familiar for that. And I remember by the time I got to the car, I wasn't crying anymore, and I was freaking starving, and I had not eaten truly in 3 weeks. And I remember Kristen was like, what do you want? I will get you anything. I wanted a bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit from McDonald's. So I've got really, really fancy palate, as you can tell. I've talked about McDonald's and, all right, Cracker Barrel. They have great biscuits. And they put them on your table, and they're like this endless bucket of a thing of biscuits. All right. I ate 3 of them before I got home, 2 things of orange juice, and 2 hash browns. And then I slept for 2 days. And it was an incredible gift. I wasn't better, when I woke up, but I had gotten food in me and I had slept. And so I at least had some reserve to begin to do the work that I knew needed to happen. And it took some time. All right. We good to kind of, how are we on time? I do want to say that you can ask me some questions if you want to ask any questions right now. Would be great about that experience. We're going to do this again in just a little while, so there'll be some more time. Here you go. It should turn on right there. And if you have a question for me, we've got a microphone here.
So what made you finally figure out, what took you there? What brought you there? What was that final, so we know physically and all of that, but what was going on in your mind to take you to that bad place? Because you had this loving family and wife.
All of the good stuff.
Yeah.
I have all the stuff.
It's on.
Is it on?
Is it on?
Her question was, if you didn't hear, is what I ended up in the ER. I ended up in all those places. What was happening? What was happening in me that I knew something, right? I needed to go get help. So Hurricane Harvey had hit, and we didn't sustain any damage until 2 weeks after the storm, when the foundation of our home began to fall in. And so I could lay in my bed and hear cracking. Now, most of that was just settling and darn it, Houston soil and all of that. That's what happens. I didn't know that. I was new. We had just bought that house, not that, So I could hear it. And I could hear water dripping, which I don't think, but it was like, it just was terrifying to me. So I didn't think about all of that, and Palmer jumped in, and I offered a camp for children. We thought we would have 30 children. We had 80 children come every day the week after Hurricane Harvey. And we took care of them while their parents were trying to get their lives back together. So what happened is I gave. I tend to do this. I gave everything I absolutely had. And then I had nothing else. And I remember, I love my therapist who said, when you're not eating and you're not sleeping, you're in trouble. And I knew then I was in trouble. I would wake up in panics in the middle of the night. I couldn't sleep. My brain just went and went and went and went and went. And then I would hold it together and people would think I was fine, and then I wasn't. And then I knew really something was really going on when I was looking at my wife and daughter, and then realized I couldn't see them. It completely blurred out, and I thought, okay, I have a brain tumor or whatever, And really, when you have anxiety and when you have that kind of panic, the way it affects you. I'm no professional, by the way. Let me just say this. I'm not a therapist, not a psychiatrist. I'm professional in the sense that I walk the path every day of having an anxiety disorder. I was also diagnosed with ADHD around the same time, and it's amazing that when all of that was connected, and when I began to manage and all of that was being treated, my world just turned so much brighter. And I wish it would have happened when I was younger. I'm such an advocate for us talking with our children about mental health. I wish there was a class that really started with 5-year-olds, because 5-year-olds struggle, So whatever y'all can do to help make that happen, let's encourage people to be able to speak about that. But yeah, that's how I knew. I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, I couldn't see. And every bump, lump, flutter I felt, I would Google. It's the worst. Don't do that. Don't self-diagnose yourself. Most of the time, you're wrong. Most of the time, you're wrong. The other thing I will say about anxiety and a panic attack specifically, I don't know if anybody has had that or knows what that feels like. My arms start tingling and burning. I feel like I can't breathe. My emotions are erratic. And I thought you feel like you're going to die. The good news about a panic attack, it's not going to kill you. It's just not. So I have a friend who says, sit there. Say, hey, I know you're here. Let it do what it needs to do for the 5 minutes. It's going to do what it's going to do. And then it's going to go away. And you're going to be exhausted. And you might cry. And you might need to go sit in a dark room for a little while or take a nap. That's okay. So it only takes power, or it only takes from us what we allow it to take from us. And so if you can find a way just to, if something like that happens, put your feet on the ground. Try to focus on something in the present. Count backwards from 100. You know why that works? Because your brain has to do the thinking required to do that. So it breaks the cycle of this panic that you're feeling, because you're not focused on the panic. So that's just an example of a thing I learned along the way. That was a long answer to your question, but that's how I knew. Anybody else? I didn't say it again.
I think everybody's kind of eager to go down.
Do their thing. I know it's time.
And so, if you want to.
I'm going to give some instructions here, and then do it in there, and then folks know what to expect. And what time do you want to start in there? Do we have a little break right now?
Just about 15-minute transition time.
Right, so take a breather. Look around this beautiful space. There's a labyrinth out there that they just put in this week. And this is just a beautiful place to be. So we're going to have some fun in a few minutes. And I encourage you to engage. Let me tell you what we're going to do. You're going to go in there, and everybody's going to get a plate, and we're going to put some paint. I'm going to need some helpers in the next few minutes to put some paint on plates. Okay? Everybody's also going to get a sheet of paper. Now, I encourage you to finger paint. Now, some of you may freak out and say, no, I can't do that. I just, whatever. Whatever. It's water-based. You can do it. But if you can't, I did bring some gloves. But I'm going to laugh at you if you use gloves, so, whatever. No, I'm just kidding. And what I'm going to ask you to do is I want you to create an image of your, sort of where your life is right now, what it feels like. I know that's big and broad. Now, the benefit and the gift of painting with your fingers is you can't be exact. It can't be perfect looking. So the whole point of this is that it is not an exercise to create the most beautiful piece of artwork. It's just the process. And probably for most of you, you have not finger painted in a very long time. Or never. So I would encourage you to try that a little bit. And we're going to work on that, and I want it to be a practice for you to sort of enter into that. I have lots of paper. I want you to play with the paint, smear the colors, be creative. And that is step one and part of our day together. So go in peace, and we will gather shortly.